This is the meeting of the Tumwater Historic Preservation Commission, and today is April 18, 2024. I'd like to call to order, and are you reading the names or am I reading the names? I'm reading the names. Is Dave Shipley present? I believe so. Alex Rossiter, are you here? Don't see Alex. He has an excused absence.
Alex responded that he would be here.
Okay.
Would
Dave,
not going to be here.
Would be here.
Would be here.
Dave Nicandri, are you
Listen.
present? And Renee Radcliffe Sinclair, are you present?
I am.
Marnie Slakey, are you here? No. And Don Trosper, are you here?
Yes.
Okay. The changes to the agenda, Chuck, I think you had one change to the agenda that, or did you get it on here? I don't think you did, about the sign.
No, that would be a change. If you want to do that at the end under other business to talk about the
Okay.
Highway 99 sign, the potential for a Highway 1 sign.
Well, other business, you know what? There is no sign thing on here on other business. So I'll do it after the Davis Meeker oak tree thing. Okay.
Sure.
Okay. March 21, 2024, approval of minutes is delayed, I think. I don't remember seeing them anyway.
No, we're having a delay getting our recording minutes back from the recording secretary service. So you'll see that at your next meeting.
Okay. I'd like now to open public comment. At this time, we will receive public comments. You may comment on items relating city business not scheduled for a public hearing. A sign-up sheet is available in the back for people wishing to sign up for public comment. When I call your name, please come up to the podium on my right. Speak into the microphone clearly. Please state your name and address for the record. Each individual will be limited to 1 3-minute period to make their remarks, regardless of the number of topics they wish to address. All comments shall be directed towards the council as a whole, not to individual council members and not to members of the audience. Please refrain from disruptive behavior such as booing or hissing or audible comments, cheering or clapping. So at this time, I would like to call those who signed up, if they have signed up. Do we have the sign up sheet this time or not?
We typically don't do the sign up sheet for this meeting. That's more of a city council function. So it's more of
Okay,
whoever's in
fair
the-
enough.
and
I
then-
didn't see a sign up sheet, so, okay.
And then we'll want to check with Brianna if there's anyone online that wishes to speak. And
Okay.
you can choose to go either way.
Okay. Are you all ready then? All right. So, first person who would like to speak to the Historic Commission, please go to the podium and introduce yourself with name and address, and you have 3 minutes to talk.
Good evening. My name is Beowulf Brower. I'm an ISA certified arborist and tree risk assessor with a BS in forestry. I came here before you tonight to speak to the Davis Meeker oak tree, or speak for it rather. This board is tasked with safeguarding the heritage of Tumwater, fostering the restoration of historic sites, and resolving conflicts between preservation and development. Based on these duties, I implore you to retain this tree on the historic register. The historic importance of this tree is not up for debate. It predates not only the rest of the register, but even the United States itself by more than a century. It has been a landmark since the time of covered wagons traversing what is now Old Highway 99. It remains so to this very day. It is living history, part of our past you can touch. Buildings can be rebuilt and refurbished. The tree cannot. The claim that this vessel of history, there is a claim that this vessel of history is a risk to the public. As I have shown in a lengthy analysis submitted to this board, the risks posed by this tree were exaggerated in a series of mistakes made during the assessment. The city arborist report, as is currently written, cannot be used to justify the removal of this tree for the volume and seriousness of the errors that it contains. Further, as proven in the analysis and the emails attached to it, a public records disclosure from the Washington State's Insurance Administration shows no evidence that there was any recommendation made by them. This is despite the fact that the city attorney referred to the tree as being very dead in an email to the WCIA months after the arborist report was submitted and available for reading. I visited the oak this morning. The leaves should be set in a few weeks. Your board holds the power now to demand better. My recommendation is to retain the tree on the registry and request, in the interest of preservation, a neutral third party with an expertise in heritage trees. An assessment from them would provide clear guidance on the steps needed to retain this tree. In the interim, if it is retained on the registry, mulching would be a cheap way to set a precedent for protecting the tree. In my professional opinion, there are many arboricultural methods that would lower the risk of failure to a tolerable level. Using them would allow future generations to touch this piece of the past. You will hear tonight from other arborists, including some who have worked to preserve this tree in years and decades past. All of them have more experience and are better qualified than me. I implore you to consider their advice and consider it a preview of what a second opinion might sound like. Thank you for your time, and please, for the sake of the community, retain this tree on the registry. If this is at all feasible, I yield my remaining time to other members. Also, as an aside, the sign was very cool. I saw the meeting last night, and I thought about bringing my own prop, but I didn't have an oak tree small enough to hoist up in the air.
Thank you for your comments. Stick around and get more information about that sign, maybe. Anybody else who would like to speak to the Historic Commission? Your name and address, please.
I do have a speaking deficit, so please pardon that. So Ray Gleason, 6226 Cedar Flats Road, Olympia. So this is the 2010. This is what I have received from Tumwater for applying the semi-permeable membrane to the damage that existed from the material that fell off of a vehicle going down Old Highway 99. It is as I have been working then and following to preserve the Davis Meeker oak tree. I found there was no effort at all from the city of Tumwater in preserving the tree. I was seeing vehicles hitting semi trucks were hitting the canopy on Old Highway 99, and I took my company. I talked to the persons in the State Patrol hangar. I had them assist me as flaggers, and I donated my time, and we lifted the canopy so that for highway clearance. The city of Tumwater did not become involved in that at all. Please allow me to get this. Okay, I'll go back to February 21st, 2023 was the last time I came to this facility. I spoke to a council regarding a compromised Douglas fir tree in Pioneer Park near several historical headstones, some of them belonging to the Bush family. This is, again, well, I'll go back. This is not exactly related to the Davis Meeker oak, but it is indirectly. I will, the relevance being the Douglas fir tree that I was commenting regarding had already failed in the past. It was inoculated with a variety of fungus that was going to cause future failures. It had multiple tops, and the headstones had been broken previous. I had brought up to the city of Tumwater, there was that potential. The city of Tumwater did bring up and had the city's arborist take a look at it. There was an inspection done. The city arborist chose to not remove.
I'm sorry, your 3 minutes are up. You're limited to 3 minutes tonight. Appreciate your time, appreciate your efforts in the past regarding the tree. So thank you for your comments, and I'm glad you liked the sign as well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for coming. Any other public comments? Yes, go for it.
Feel odd wearing a hat, but they were, so I didn't want to be out of place. My name is Neil Wolbert. I started business in Olympia in the 60s and love the place. One of the things that's been unique about our company is it's worked with trees very similar to the oak, but nothing as important, I think, as that tree. In my opinion, the tree is worth saving. I have deep feelings about it. I worked on a tree with Rob Lloyd, who was an arborist. I think one of the best, not to minimize the gentleman here, but one of the best that I know. And I worked alongside him just to learn about tree work. And I was pretty dumb, I found out about that. So he taught me a lot. Rob Lloyd was not afraid to do things a little bit off. And with the oak tree, it was a great big job. It was a great big job. I'm not going to be able to tell you much in 3 minutes, but it was a great big job. We volunteered our time. Our company's done a lot of work to that tree, influenced other arborists to come in and do work on the tree free. Had some from Tacoma that brought their entire team down and worked most of the day on that tree, taking every little piece of dead wood off that tree. It was magnificent. So we had folks like that were they're just not just tree folks. They recognize the importance of a 400-year masterpiece that sits alongside the road. It's more than just a tree. For me, when I first drove through here in the 60s, the road was different. Everything was different here. I think it wasn't a cow path, but it was pretty close. And then, you know, when the road was moved, I guess, because the highway had to be built, I think. And the tree wasn't even really considered in it, even though it was protected with the barrier. It was 3 feet of soil piled up around the stem. Well, you just don't do that. You just don't. This tree had a decay pocket in it, a cavity in the trunk that we excavated. And actually in that trunk, there's one little picture in the book that shows that the cavity is only about this big right now. You couldn't squeeze in there. Rob Lloyd got in that cavity himself, and he cleaned every bit of decayed, that was armillaria. I believe it was armillaria. It might have been another disease. He removed every piece of decayed wood inside, and then we treated
I'm
that.
sorry, your 3 minutes are up.
The
I
last-
appreciate your time and coming, and it's great to see you.
Thank you. Out of all the things that I've lost, I miss my memory the most. I just wanted
Thank you. Is there any other further comments from anyone who has not spoken yet?
We have several people online.
We have 9 people online.
Okay,
Not everyone tonight is named with an actual name. So if you do want to speak, please state your first and last name. And I'm going to try my best to pronounce some of these. So first up, we have Jaw 9 Gates. If you would like to speak, now is your time to do so.
Hi, this is Janine Gates, and my grandson is sitting next to me. Well, I wasn't planning on speaking. I just want to say that we care very deeply about the tree and its future. I did tune in to the last meeting, and it was very refreshing to see the commission not rubber stamp the limited direction provided by staff. And I appreciated Dave McAndry thinking outside the box and suggesting that the acorns be saved. And a grove started across the street. And while he was speaking, it reminded me of the callousness shown to the 200-year-old Medicine Creek treaty tree at the Nisqually Delta. And as you know, in 1854, the treaty was signed under that Douglas fir. And in the 1960s, 6 lanes of Interstate 5 were built across the Delta bearing the tree. So that was very unfortunate, but beginning in 1975, seedlings from that tree were collected and given to area tribes. And the tree has since died, but some foresight, was seen so that there would be seedlings from the tree. But I haven't heard any consideration or outreach to area tribes, and I would definitely like to see that initiated if that hasn't already been done. So thank you. That's all.
Thank you for taking the time for your comments. Very much appreciated. Next.
Okay, we have Mick Miazio.
Hello.
You're on.
Hi, my name is Mick Miazio. I live in Shelton, Washington, but work out of Miller-Sylvania State Park. I'm a certified arborist and a certified tree risk assessor. I've been doing arborist work in the region for the last 10 years, and prior to that, I received my arborist education in New York City. I'm originally from Poland. I wanted to say that Poland is one of the last countries in Europe that does in fact have very old oaks. We're talking 1,000-year-old oaks. And they did not get to that age by themselves. They required a lot of help. Sometimes that means a prop or a cabling system or a brace, certainly mulching, and a variety of other measures, we got to remember that it's still a living being, and it's kind of just like people. Once we get older, we need more. I'm actually currently out of work with a bad back, but like I can kind of relate here. Yeah, it's just living history. It's a monument, and it really defines the community. The actions surrounding such a tree, most of all growth in developed areas have been cut down for a variety of reasons. Sometimes it's pure profit for selling the wood. Sometimes it's just in the way, or it's deemed unfeasible to maintain. But things like roads, infrastructure, buildings, that can all be worked on and moved, fixed. Once this tree is lost, it's lost forever. And wanted to speak a little bit to the process of risk assessment. This tree does not pose imminent risk. Imminent risk is sometimes tree that after a wind event, it's actively heaving, breaking, that sort of thing. That is not the case here, which that fact in itself gives us some time to truly look into it. But I would really advise, looking to places that have old oaks. Again, Poland is one. I think Great Britain has a pretty good society that has a whole and a code of conduct on how to retain them. It's up to us. It's up to us. And trees oftentimes don't, as much as they can age, they don't necessarily.
I'm sorry you have reached the 3-minute limit.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for taking the time, and thank you for your comments.
Next, we have Joy Johnston.
Oh, hi there. I don't have any comments. I'm just observing the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for taking the time.
Okay, next we have Teresa.
I also have no comments.
other than to say I'm in favor of doing whatever it takes to save the tree.
Next, we have Esther.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm also very much in favor of saving the tree. You know, when you think about history, there's nothing more striking than that tree. I remember when I first moved here and first seeing that tree, it was like a wonder. I said, you know, you said like, hey, how old is that tree? What kind of tree is it? It was like, it's such a, you know, iconic landmark that I can't imagine not doing whatever you can to save it. As a matter of fact, I was so concerned about it being, you know, destroyed that I took 3 of the acorns and planted them in a field near my house, just to make sure you know, that it survives, because it's just beautiful. And you know, we can't recreate the creation. You know, we have something that's a blessing and a gift from, you know, from the universe, from, you know, dare I say God, but you know, it's something worth preserving. And I really hope that you take the expense, whatever expense it takes, and the expertise, which is peers, that you have to save it. Thank you for listening.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Next, we have someone joining us via phone. Their last 3 numbers are 699. So if you could just say your name, that would be great. Okay, we will come back to you. Next, we have Sue Danver.
Hi, I'm Sue Danver, and I would hope that you save this tree. I wasn't planning on speaking, so I'm just thinking about what I really want to say. I hope that I guess there's suggestions that one compromise would be to cut it 15% all over, and that would be a misfortune. I've read Mr. Brower's report, and I would second his recommendation that we have a third neutral party do an assessment. I gather there might have been some incorrect decisions in the matrix. So I just like a third that the original report was included. So I would really like a third party to come in. To me, it's a symbol of Tumwater. The Tumwater of yesteryear. And I would just like that to be preserved as long as possible. I hope this doesn't have anything to do with the growth of the cutting it down is in any way impacted by the potential growth of the airport, that it is being cut down to allow jets. It's not been mentioned before, but I'm concerned about the growth of the airport so close to the city. So I hope this is just about the tree and its health and not about growth of the airport. It's so beautiful, and it's very good for wildlife. I'm a birder, and it's a big deciduous tree, and they have more insects for the warblers and the little birds. Deciduous trees support greater wildlife. For that reason, I would like the protection. So thank you very much. And it's a hard decision, I understand, and I hope you make the one to save the tree as long as it's healthy. And I gather it is getting healthier rather than sicker. So thank you so much.
Thank you for your comments. Appreciate your time.
Okay, next we have iPad 5. So again, please state your name. Okay, we can circle back. Deborah. Jeff Foster.
I'll just reiterate what I said when I submitted. Can't hear me? I don't understand why.
Yes, we can. You need to start the clock.
But people can hear me?
Yes, we can.
Go for it. You're on.
Okay, I'll just repeat sort of what I said in the letter I submitted a couple of weeks ago. That I don't see an imminent reason why this tree should be cut down. I have similar sentiments of how magnificent a tree it is and what it represents historically to Tumwater. And at the same time, I appreciate the fact that there is rot in the interior of the tree. But I think that the analysis of the where the rot was at the base, that suggested that there was still more than enough sound wood to support the full tree. So until it crosses some sort of threshold here, failure of the entire tree is not indicated in the immediate future. So I think they should try to save it. I guess that's all I have to say right now. Thank you.
Thank you for your time. Appreciate your comments.
Okay, I would like to give about 30 seconds for the 4 people that I called on that did not offer comment. If you would like to, please raise your hand. If not, we will move on. Okay, here is Deborah. Deborah, are you able to unmute? Okay. If you'd like to write into us, that would be great. If not, I think we are done.
Okay. For those of you who took the time in public, as well as those of you who came through the Zoom method, appreciate your time on making comments about the oak tree. At this time, we will continue with the discussion of the Davis Meeker oak tree. And Chuck, I believe you were going to be doing it next before we go to.
Yeah, I can start us out. We talked about this somewhat at length at your last meeting, and I think we ended that meeting feel like we needed further discussion, more description of how the tree was assessed and the various methods that had been suggested that should be added to that evaluation of the tree. We weren't able to put together a work session that fit everyone's schedule, so we've just kind of moved that topic to this meeting. So that you can continue to discuss and answer all the questions that you have about the tree and how it was evaluated. Kevin McFarland, our urban forester, is online with us again tonight. He's prepared to talk about the methods he used and why he used them. And I think that's a good way to start this discussion. I would point out that the decision in front of you tonight and the recommendation you need to make to City Council is whether you want to keep the Davis Meeker Oak on the city's historic register, or you want to recommend to the city council that they remove the Davis Meeker Oak from the historic register. Your choices tonight aren't deciding the ultimate fate of the tree, whether it stays or whether it is cut down. But this is a part of that process and something by city code that we have to do since the tree is on the historic register. So ultimately tonight, your vote is on to list or delist the tree from the city's historic register.
Okay. Now it's our turn to have a gentleman give us a presentation again. Good evening, sir. Are you on mute? We were not able to hear you.
Okay, how is that?
Oh, my goodness. Fantastic.
All right, sorry, I was talking to no one. So Chuck Denny, thank you for having me, and as well as the commissioners, thank you for asking me to present again. I'm available. I can go off of what you folks ask with, not throwing it back to you, but any questions you might have, or we can go in through the basic assessment form. Parts of that as to why I used what or how I came up with what in the determination. I'm open to how you would like to start.
That's an open-ended question. David?
I have some preliminary questions.
What's that?
I said I have some preliminary questions.
Go for it.
So, Kevin, if I can call you that.
You can.
Your documentation and some of the testimony we have received refers to a time frame of evaluation. What is the time frame of evaluation you used? I mean, are we talking about 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, 100 years? When your report refers to future failures, it might include large diameter scaffold branches from the east-facing codominant stem. For example, and I just use that as a representative line of text.
Mm-hmm.
What is the parameter of future failures in that description?
Well, at the top of the form, you'll see time frame, and I filled that out as 1 year.
Sorry, I don't see it.
It's in the report. It's Appendix 1. It's the attached basic tree risk assessment form. And in the wording at the very top, you'll see client, date, time, and just below that is the target assessment line item. And right above that, it says time frame.
1 year.
Yes.
Thank you. I see it now.
Sure.
There's a lot of documentation here, and few of us, well, speaking for myself, are arborists.
No, I think you're speaking for the entire commission, being overwhelmed sometimes with the information.
It's pretty detailed.
Yes, in your report, under comments, you said the retrenchment option would be controversial, to say the least, with the potential of its ineffectiveness. Can you elaborate on why it would be controversial and why it would be ineffective?
Turn my volume up here just a sec. In talking with Tyler Dunton, when he was there conducting the tomography assessment, we discussed that in length, and I also did research and such about retrenchment pruning. And with the tree that we're talking about, I felt that with what we discussed, and also it's mentioned in his memorandum of taking or removing approximately 15 feet around the whole canopy to reduce end weight, I felt that that was going to be too much stress or too much live canopy removal for the tree to basically survive. And then secondly, most importantly in my mind, that was not going to be enough to take off the stress load, in particular that codominant stem that leaned out over toward the hangar, the airport hangar. That's just an example, but overall, I felt that it would not be adequate, and therefore retrenchment was not an option of mitigation that I was supportive of.
Okay. Are you familiar with the repair job on this tree that was done by Mr. Wolbert 16 years ago?
If you're talking about a repair job, I believe and Neil can correct, I'm not sure if he can speak or not from the audience, but if it's, and maybe you know this as well from if you talked with him, the repair job was from some damage that occurred on the side of the trunk of the tree that was facing the highway. Is that the part?
Correct.
Yeah, I am aware of that.
Does the testimony we've received in writing suggests that the tree, again, I'm struggling for nomenclature because this isn't my field.
That's fine.
You want to talk about 18th century exploration or historic highways, I'm your guy. But
The explorer's name is Cook.
the testimony we've received suggests that the damage was significant and the damage was healed. Could a dying or decayed or tree in a retrograde, retrocessive mode heal itself so effectively?
So in our arboriculture, we call that actually wound closure. It's not healing. It actually will close over that wound.
Fair enough.
And just to refer back to, and I mentioned this in the previous commission meeting, the tree is actually vigorous. It's growing very nicely. It has great internode growth, good density in the leaves, color, all that over the years that I've assessed it. And the tree closed over that wound with wound wood or callus wood, if you will, like any oak would do in trying to heal or grow over that and hold off wood decaying pathogens, insect and infestations that get into that inner wood. That said, again, the tree is, in my mind, structurally unsound. And there's two different things there. The tree can actually be quite vigorous looking and healthy and growing as all I just described, but it does not have, if you will, a good foundation. It is compromised. So there's two different things there.
That's very that's a point very well made, I must say, and but one that isn't immediately clear in your written report, but you've clarified the distinction, because I think one of the things those of us who are not botanists or arborists are having difficulty with is how a tree can be eminently not merely healthy but vigorous, yet deemed worthy of being cut down. So that seems on the face of it contradictory. But I just want to, without necessarily coming to a conclusion as to the upshot of it, saying that the tree is vigorous but unsound, I think is the most forthright declaration you've made that's come to us so far in this process. I was out there today in advance of this meeting, and I was looking at the tree, trying to do a 360 without endangering myself in the middle of traffic. And it struck me that the tree leans, again, using layman's language, the tree leans to the southwest, which is to say that it's leaning into the prevailing direction of, into the direction of prevailing winds. Would that not be conducive to its longstanding ability to withstand windstorms? First of all, do you agree that it's leaning in that direction? And were it to be that, does that not suggest it's, as it were, and I'm not trying to anthropomorphize. Actually, I'm not trying to, no, that's an animal human. I don't know what a plant human nexus is, but you follow my drift. It
I do.
seems as if the tree is growing in a direction to gird itself against prevailing wind. Am I imagining things, or is there some sense that that might be true?
It might be true. It may be a combination. Good example of, if you've been on the coast, I'm sure you have. Have you witnessed some of the shore pine or Sitka spruce, or even high alpine trees? You've seen that effect from environment on the growth of the tree. The other part might be the fact that southwest, as you would put a potted plant on the patio, it will lean toward and grow toward more sunlight.
Okay, before we get to the matrix, one last question, I guess. We've received testimony that is called, well, just calling it like it is, called into question the reliability of sounding the tree with a hammer, which again, using my layman's, my sense of that is like thumping a melon in the store. Am I getting the right notion of,
You
I'm
are.
mixing metaphors, but that's what we're talking about here, right?
In a way, yeah.
Okay.
Say that.
And also some tomography. So was the tomography, was the tomography one slice in a vertical array, or was it a whole, was it like, again, I'm looking for language.
Did you hit the tree more than once?
Well, I presume you hit the tree more than once. I guess, was it just one slice across the tree, or was it like a magnet, like they do at the hospital, a CT scan or an MRI, where you run it across a whole length of the tree vertically?
So in comparison to I'll talk a little bit about resistograph and also sonic tomography and comparison, but back to your original part of the question, using a mallet is just one part of my assessment, or any other arborist assessment. I also, in the report, as you note, I took some core samples from an increment borer. When I had Amanda Hancock climb the oak and go up into the canopy in the areas that I pointed out that I had some question about, she had a probe and also a mallet and conducted some soundings. It actually can be very accurate. It's so basic, but it is in the hands, or if you will, the ear of somebody that has done it for a while and is familiar with even certain species sound certain different ways in terms of whether they're solid or if there's decay present or a void inside a scaffold branch or a trunk. So the mallet, I know we keep focusing on that, but that is just one part of all of these things that I utilized in terms of my assessment, from visual all the way to the mallet and in between. In comparison to resistograph, that indicates decay through basically drilling a very small hole into or going into the with a bit into the tree. The device records the resistance of the wood to the drill bit. It'll show this as a graph or a printout, kind of like an EKG printout. They're accurate. It's a good product, good tool. It is more of a sliver or a very direct area where it is utilized or drilled into the trunk or a branch or a scaffold. And in comparison to a sonic tomography, that has sensors that are placed all around the circumference of the tree or the perimeter of the trunk. And the sensors transmit and receive sound. And what I'm getting at is that actually can pick up more of an area in terms, like you mentioned, more vertical as opposed to resistograph, which is more horizontal. So I chose tomography for the base and a look, if you will, or a view of the main stem or the trunk of the tree, and knowing that I was going to I would receive some information, if you will, in terms of potential decay further up or below that area, and again, in comparison to a resistograph.
So is the upshot of that then that the main trunk of the tree is at greater risk than any of the dependent branches that disperse from the trunk?
And I agree with Tyler that a tree probably won't just end up like collapsing, sort of like a shell, if you will, and the sides blowing out, and the tree just kind of comes down like a demolition of a skyscraper. It's not going to do that. You do have to think about, and I did, with the tomography and also the cavity at the base of the tree. What does that look like in the root flare and into the root system at the base of the tree? It doesn't just go up, it actually affects below as well. So there's that consideration. So possibly the tree could, and I don't note this, but it's possible that the tree could entirely fail, like at the base, go over. But what I had determined, and it's still basically believe, is that the issue with that decay, as you mentioned earlier, it goes up into the inclusion where the two codominant stems are. One being going over to the east, over side of the over above the Highway 99, and one heading toward the airport hangar. That area is compromised, and on up into the scaffold branches from those two codominant stems, in particular the ones on the east side. So that's where I really have a concern, where I believe there's going to be an upper stem, codominant stem, or a large scaffold failure. A lot of answer there for you, but that's kind of how I looked at it.
Okay, so I have two follow-ups to that. If the whole tree were to fall under some predictable scenario, and I wouldn't begin to assess which cause would be more probable than another, but all things being equal, and of course they never really are, the whole tree were to collapse, what direction would it fall?
There's factors that would be involved with that. Is there high winds as a catalyst, or snow load, ice storm? There's things that can play into that. Sometimes it could just be a combination of all those and gravity, and then the weak structure in the interior of the stem. So that's hard to say. I guess it could be theorized that it could be more toward the south or southwest, as you mentioned before, with the lean of the canopy toward that area. So possibly more toward the airport side, if you will, or the hangar side. But again, there's a lot of factors. You're getting a feel of what goes through our minds when we do these assessments. It's involved.
Okay, well, that's the run of my preliminary questions. You'll recall, Mr. Chairman, I was the one that asked that we come back and actually have someone walk us through the risk assessment form. And and I presume you're prepared to do that with us, Kevin.
Yes.
I'm particularly curious. This was the thing that was completely mystifying a month ago, which is how a decision in one category necessarily yields a result. I'm sorry, why a determination in one column necessarily results in a finding in a parallel column. Because if there's some logic there, it's not immediately apparent to me as to why the circling of one of four dots, improbable, possible, probable, or imminent in one column, automatically, or if it translates at all, to very low, low, medium, and high, going on to the right of the form. So it's the internal dynamic of the matrix that I found to be particularly mystifying. And of course, as you know, and I don't warrant anything beyond just stating the obvious, we've received some testimony that's called into question the accuracy of your matrix. So I think it would be helpful to have you walk us through, maybe not the whole form, but at least hypothetical, at least one large scaffold branch, which if I understand your testimony. So I guess unless we're to do the whole form, and I'm not prejudging that we should or shouldn't, what do you think would be the best case study to walk us through the form? A large scaffold branch, a codominant stem, or a branch? What would be most helpful?
Well, I'll address this in a moment. I just wanted to open it up for any of the commissioners if you had any other questions besides
Okay,
going
fair
deep
enough.
dive into the
All right.
matrix here.
Fair enough. I'm done, Mr.
Are
I
there-
thought that was just the preliminary.
Oh, it is.
That,
Done
we,
with phase
we
one.
expect you back on stage again. Is that it? David, thank you for all your time and effort and all your questions. Other commission members, any comments you'd like to make?
I want to compliment Kevin for his obvious love for the trees and our history and the heritage of Tumwater, which I am concerned about. And that's what our commission is about. Our commission is not to determine health of arborism and all those kind of things that go into what you deal with. Ours is the historic factor of it and the heritage of Tumwater that's represented by it. And so I think the tree board probably has more input on the trees' health and urban forestry and that type of thing, where our historic commission input is on history and heritage and not to comment necessarily on the health of the tree. The city council is going to determine finally what the final decision is. They have to balance all those efforts. I see Ray and Neil over here, and I think of the work they've done over the years. And then my grandpa, when I was a little kid, he put on his logging spurs and went up that tree in his old age, and he shouldn't have done it. I think he survived it, but he was trimming it. So even my grandpa had a little hand in that tree, and of course, I suppose Indian tribes before white men arrived also dealt with these trees. I know we had people off the Oregon Trail or Cowlitz Trail that camped under that tree, and I found historic record of that. So it's a lot of heritage involved in that tree, and it's really important to preserve it, to me, for the sake of tourism and our heritage and our most of the people that comment are not just arborists, but they're the people that love that tree, and it's a landmark. And Tumwater doesn't have that many more landmarks. We have buildings, the old brewery and things like that, but this is a living history. It's older than the bush butternut tree that was that Ray worked on a lot too, and how that fell down was a traumatic thing for us historians, I guess you'd say, to see the bush butternut tree go. And that was only a couple hundred years old, I think, where this is 400 plus. I mean, this is amazing to see that tree surviving. It shouldn't be up to us to hurry up the process. It's eventually going to fall someday, but we should preserve it as long as we can.
Renee?
I could not say it better than that.
Oh, well, thanks. In the last meeting, I talked about a quandary, and I'm still in the quandary. Because I understand on the one hand, the city arborist is saying that the tree is in danger of collapsing and what have you. And on the other hand, somebody used to speak up for historic structures. Since this is my third historic commission to be on, there's always a comment I've always tried to remember. And historic structures can't speak for themselves. Which is unfortunate. Too bad the tree can't say, yes, I'm done. I'm tired and I want to become mulch in the ground or something, but it can't. So on one hand, we have an arborist who says that the tree is in danger and has a very graphic picture of a red line going from the base of the tree to one branch, which is quite large. And we've heard testimony from a standpoint of people speaking that think that another person should have an input on whether or not the arborist that the city has hired to represent the city is correct or not. So again, I'm at a quandary. On the one hand, I would love to save the tree. On the other hand, I recognize the fact that it might be a liability for the standpoint of the city. And so it's kind of like almost flipping a coin and trying to figure out, well, is it heads or is it tail? And somebody mentioned earlier, I think it's a woman on the speakerphone, a tough decision, and it is a tough decision. There's not one of us on the Historic Commission that would love to see a historic building destroyed or a historic tree or a tombstone or whatever it may be. We're all interested in trying to hang on to them. And it's nice having David on the Historic Commission because he can dig in a little bit more deeper into questions that are absolutely mind-boggling to me. So David, I appreciate your input. So it would be like to entertain more comments. I have no idea other than to thank the commission members for making their comments. And David, I don't know if you wanted to do more or not comments or questions or whatever.
Well, I completely agree with what Don had to say. And the only reason I'm perhaps belaboring the technical assessment, now invoking our fellow Commissioner Alex, who's unfortunately not here tonight. The only reason this is before us is because of the risk assessment form. And it just seemed to me to be prudent. I'm not wanting to prejudge the level of thoroughness the city council would bring to the issue, but they're a busy group of people with a whole panoply of issues in front of them. And given the widespread degree of public interest in this question, which transcends our portfolio of history, it seemed to me it would be incumbent upon us to at least understand the mechanics of the recommendation that puts the issue in front of us to begin with. And that's, and as I said at the last meeting, and perhaps it's worth reiterating now, the mere fact that I might completely agree with the logic model, Mr. McFarland, on the matrix, doesn't mean that I necessarily agree with his recommendation that the tree be cut down. But it seemed, given again the widespread public interest, I think we owe it to ourselves, if not to the community, to kind of demystify this process. I mean, I consider myself a reasonably good reader of public policy statements and documentation, and even with a detailed criticism of the report, I still don't understand dynamically the mechanism of how circling one dot leads to a determination. And to me, it's not readily apparent what the linkages are. And if only for intellectual curiosity, I'd like to ask Kevin to go through it so I can at least.
I was going to say, it sounds like you want to go and have McFarland explain in more detail.
Yeah.
Okay. Mr. McFarland, can you contribute to the explanation of
Again,
I
I would like to add before I begin, I don't take this lightly. As I mentioned before in the other commission meeting prior, I have been working and assessing and doing different things with that oak tree for 27 years. In fact, Ray Gleason took me up once in a bucket lift, aerial lift, and we inspected the tree years ago. Neil, I remember when he did the air spade and we opened that base up and exposed the armillaria root rot and put in the river rock to make that an inhospitable environment for the armillaria to continue its infection. Have had other work done on the tree in years past. So I deliberated for quite a long time, and it's a difficult decision. A tree like that, like amongst many trees, but in particular this one, it's a portal to the past. And I recognize that. And I want folks, because I've actually talked with friends and some other colleagues, there's a lot of misunderstanding and misconceptions about my intent. I don't want the tree for firewood. I don't want it for furniture. I don't have an agreement with the city to, funnel off some of that wood for growing shiitake mushrooms. So I don't have any other ulterior motive as to just work and do my best on assessing a tree like this and basically working my craft. So I just wanted to be said and on the record that I really have had a hard time with this. I have. And if you look at the dates on my report and the form, and the assessments took time, having different people show up and look at this tree. It was over 4 or 5 months that I deliberated with this tree. I'd have lunch underneath that tree. So if anyone ever questions, my concern and my admiration of this tree, they're very, very wrong. So I just want that to be said. So in looking at the report, we can focus on the tree risk assessment form if you'd like. The risk categorization, that's the most the focus has been on. That is an important part of the assessment and in contributing information and in conveying it also in a report. But as you can see in this this form, there's so much more information that helps someone like myself and others if they look into it to help you come up with a determination and look at different options and such. And I also want to add Tyler Bunton with Tree Solutions. He performed his tomography and he did a wonderful job and he was focused on that. He had about 2 hours with that tree and myself. He did not conduct a risk assessment on this tree. He performed his tomography work and then he offered, and I asked him, what was his thoughts? He decided that it would probably be a good idea to retrench the tree or apply retrenchment. He did not conduct a risk assessment of this tree. He brought that up as an option with 2 hours of thought. So I want that to be added to the evening's discussion as well. So, and I'm not throwing him under the bus or anything like that. He provided amazing information and it was very, very useful and he's quite knowledgeable. But again, he did not conduct a tree risk assessment of this tree. So back to the beginning of this form, you can see just the target assessment. 1, 2, 3, and 4, you can see the different descriptions. I know Highway 99 is not necessarily a target. It is the vehicle traffic that goes back and forth on that. And I do have that as constant occupancy rate, constant use. The airplane hangar, as you can see, that's another target. The north and south parking lot, and also I took into account the electrical service drop to the hangar. That's one thing you basically start off with a risk assessment and looking at what are the targets. You must consider those. And then you look into the likelihood of the tree failure and impacting a target and the consequences of that failure. And so taking that little bit of information right there that we just looked at, and let's go to the second page under risk categorization. And in preparation for tonight's discussion and my presentation, if you will, I looked at old notes in my field notes from my risk assessment form, and I want to add, and this is probably going to make a lot of people go, aha, is that I should have had, it was I guess you could say a typo for condition number 1, 2, and 3. They actually should be probable, not possible. So those dots that are under the likelihood section of that upper matrix, so the risk categorization, under likelihood, there's failure and impact. Under the failure columns, there's choices of improbable, possible, probable, and imminent. I made a mistake with 1, 2, and 3 condition numbers. They should be probable, not possible. And I can provide an amendment to the city regarding that. Again, it doesn't change my risk rating because again, I based that off of my risk assessment form that I utilized when I was conducting my assessment back in June of 23. It's again, it didn't transfer to my report. So if you're looking at that, you'll see that there should be dots under probable in the section condition number 1 under the risk categorization, and number 2 codominant stem, that should be probable instead of possible, and the branch that should be as well. The branch should be, yeah, that's correct actually. That is under possible. That one is correct.
Can I ask a question about that, Kevin?
Yeah, sure.
So would that change by moving that line of dots over one column within the failure column?
Yeah.
Does that automatically impact the impact column, the failure and impact column, and the consequential column?
No. Again, I based my information on my form that I filled out in the field. It just did not transfer in this report section right there.
So is it conceivable that something could be in likelihood of imminent failure, but have very low impact, unlikely failure and impact, and negligible consequence?
Yes.
And something could be very improbable, but still have a high impact, very likely failure and impact, and severe consequence.
It could. So
in effect, and I guess we're starting to get to kind of my logic modeling here. So you're applying a subjective, with good reason. I mean, professionally certified. I'm not questioning your ability to make a determination, but you're applying a subjective note in each of those columns, independent of what might have been noted in an earlier column.
I just made a mistake in filling in the dot under possible, and it should be probable for those. I followed, and I'll show you. So let's take that. Let's go down to underneath that risk categorization. Let's look at matrix 1, likelihood matrix. Okay.
Yes.
There. Okay.
I see it.
Okay. Likelihood of failure. This is the part that I did not transfer correctly. I should have put probable. Then you look at likelihood of impacting the target. I have high. So you look at the high and you look at probable, follow that across, and you have likely under the failure impact from matrix 1. Is that understandable?
Yeah, I think so. I think I came to my understanding with your earlier comments. But that should make, but the fact that something moved from possible to probable has no effect on the impact column or failure and impact column. Those are all independently derived. There's no correlation between them other than your subjective evaluation.
Yeah, you're right. The subjective evaluation, the failure impact section where I have it likely, that's again, we're looking at let's do number one, the large scaffold branch.
Yes.
If you look down at the matrix there, and what I should have put down, I have it in my notes, but I didn't transfer it, is probable. And you look at, and it subjectively, I have high as the impact. You look at that, and then you have likely. You take that likely, go down to risk, the matrix 2, the risk rating matrix. There's likely there in the left-hand column. Then under consequences of failure, I have severe. So the likely, you take it across under the column of severe, you end up with a risk rating of high. And again, this is relative to the type of target that is described or the potential, what can happen if that a branch or a portion of the tree failed onto that target. So in comparison, let's look at branch under the condition number 3. I have poor attachment, 6 inches diameter, fall distance, so on, target protection, none, and this one is correct. I have possible, and the impact would be medium. And again, remember that target, if you look back on that other page, this target is the service drop to the airport hangar.
The power lines, yes.
Yep. So again, possible for failure, impact would be medium. And therefore, you look at that matrix, look under possible, possible. Follow it out under medium, you'll see unlikely. That's the failure impact from the matrix 1 I just showed you. Then you take unlikely down the matrix 2, risk rating matrix. It's at the bottom there in that left-hand column. And you look at impact, or the consequence would be severe. And that equates to a low risk rating. So you're right, these are subjective. These are part of the whole assessment. They help guide the consulting arborist or the person applying a risk assessment to help them come up with a determination.
Would it be your assessment that target number 1 is the one that is your principal concern, and probably the cities as well?
Yeah, because you could see the target number described as number 1. That's vehicle traffic on Highway 99, and then you have number 3. That's the north and south. Those are the parking lots, the parking areas. Number 3. But the ranking of number 2, under number 2, that's the hangar. And that's a significant target as well.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously, people and the occupancy rate on the highway is the highest. And yes, that back to your question, that was a long answer there for you. I'd be more concerned about that.
Did your commission from the city have any scope for mitigative steps that would preserve the tree and otherwise mitigate risk?
It would be part of, if I decided, yes, retrenchment is the idea or is the way to go with this tree, my report or my scope or commission would be supported by the city with me coming up with that information, going in detail if I believe that was the mitigation application that I would go with or recommend.
So not to put the idea in anyone's head, but if you were to lop off the east code determinant stem that at least based upon my ground survey, is the part that's over the highway and the greatest risk. What would happen to the rest of the tree in your professional estimation?
Well, it would stress it somewhat. Again, it depends on how much would be removed. If you go off of what Tyler Button said, 15 feet of reduction, let's say on that east side, that's significant. When you leave the other side of the tree facing west, that codominant stem, it's not an imbalance. And a lot of people bring this up when I consult with folks that are like, well, that tree, after it's been pruned along the side, it's heavy on one side, be more prone to failure. It's not necessarily that simple. It's probably not that big of a deal. The actuality is that the canopy, a full canopy, such as this in the oak, is that there's a dynamic there. If you reduce some of that area on the east side of its canopy, that could create an imbalance in terms of handling wind force, and that the intact codominant stem that's leaning out over the hanger, and it could be more vulnerable in terms of less of a full canopy taking the brunt and displacing the impact from the high wind, so to speak, for an example. So you could create sort of an imbalance, and not necessarily a balance like the tree's heavy on one side, but vulnerability or predisposition to wind damage or potential failure because you have basically reduced one side of the canopy. It's either all or nothing on this, to be honest with you, if you were going to go with retrenchment.
In other words,
you couldn't go on one side. Let's say you could. I would not recommend you just dealing with that side that, like I said, I have the most concern because it's over the vehicle traffic on the Highway 99. I didn't mean to cut you off, Commissioner. I'm sorry.
Could you, in other words, what you're saying, if you removed a big limb that's toward the highway, you could not support the other part with props or anything of that nature?
If you're talking about a structural support system, I kind of ruled that out because I don't believe there is enough strong scaffold structure to hold, if you will, that other, like you said, that other side that's the codominant is overhanging the hanger. I don't think there's enough support there or enough to work with to support that other side if we go with this sort of example of pruning application.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Any other comments?
One thing, we can't go by a polling of the public because they don't know the issues like you do. And in fact, I want to compliment you on your tremendous work.
Nice one.
He always has to slip in a pun every once in a while. Some people catch it, and then there's others that goes over their head.
We had a family friend that said he looked into his family tree and found out it was a sap. But anyway, the passion for Tumwater heritage that comes out is what's doing my heart good, to see the response of the public and also the other arborists in the area. There's a real passion for that, and that's what we're trying to do with the Historic Commission, is to encourage the passion for local history in Tumwater. And so the public's input is overwhelmingly not to delist the tree or take it down, and try to do what we can to save it as long as we possibly can until it just, fall like we all do. The historical value, I think, outweighs the legal financial liability in a historic sense to me. And the council will have to weigh that. That's their decision, of course. There's few remaining landmarks around, and we need to save that Tumwater family tree.
Okay. Any other comments? If not, we need to have a motion on whether we delist or do not delist the historic tree.
Well, if we take no action, is that not the same thing as keeping the listing? Or do we need an affirmative vote to keep it on the register?
I think the city council is looking for a vote from you.
Well,
I-
then I would move to keep the Davis Meeker oak tree on the historic list.
I second that.
Been moved and seconded to keep the historic oak tree on the Tumwater register. Is there any further discussion? Okay, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
We have a unanimous vote. I'm glad it wasn't 2-2.
I'd like to make an additional motion, Mr. Chairman. Except any item that might be required to pay for our new historic Highway 99 signs, which is amazingly ironic if you think about it. I would like to move that all remaining resources under our budget column, this commission's budget column for the balance of the year, be devoted to preservation efforts that the Parks Department might take up with community volunteers, interested third parties. We've heard testimony about mulching, planting, bracing, that any and all such options be pursued to the limit of our financial amount, provided, of course, that the council does not vote to cut the tree down, in which case that motion would be moot. But that would be my motion, to devote, except for a set aside as might be required to pay for these wonderful new signs, that all the balance of our resources be devoted to mitigation and for the historic tree.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second?
If there is any.
The signs did not cost $10,000. I do not hear a second. Then the motion dies because of lack of a second.
If I can jump in there, I would have said, I'm not sure that that would be necessary. The city does have a tree fund that's adequately funded, where money can be spent out of that fund for anything that we want to do or need to do to
So-
this tree or other trees within the city of Tumwater.
So the tree board has input on that too, then about finances. They have the fund under their
Somewhat.
somewhat.
Yeah, it's kind of spread throughout Parks Tree Board, which isn't part of the Parks Department,
Oh,
and Community Development.
okay.
I would also like to clarify to the public that the Historic Commission is simply
I got
an
mute on.
advisory board. It is not a final decision. So sometimes, and I mentioned it last time, that sometimes people think that we are the last place that it's either yes or no. But the city council now has the task of either accepting our recommendation, which is to keep the tree on the register, or to delist it and do whatever from that standpoint. I know that a lot of people have picked up acorns and what have you, and I know in their backyard someplace, they have all kinds of small little oak trees growing somewhere or potentially growing. And then I think the city has also, if I recall correct, Chuck, has also collected a lot of the acorns and what have you from the tree, and they are preserving that for future history, no matter what happens to the tree. Unfortunately, not everything can last forever, which is unfortunate, especially a historic tree. You go through the redwoods, you see them toppled and what have you, and then they all get old. But anyway, I want to thank you to the public, the three gentlemen here that all wearing nice looking hats, and appreciate the 8 or 9. I can't remember the exact number. I'm trying to keep track of it. But anyway, the people who made the comments on Zoom tonight, and copious number of notes that we got as Historic Commission members from a variety of people, some with very short comments, some with very, 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 very long comments. But it was educational for us. It's not an easy thing to do, to make a decision to chop down a historic tree, and hopefully in the long run, the tree will last. I don't think it'll be another 400 years, but it would be nice. Maybe I could ask with how long the trees usually last.
Point
But
of
David.
Point of 2 points of order.
Okay.
Will the documentation and commentary that was provided to us at our 2 meetings be automatically forwarded to the city council? Or does anyone wishing to comment have to regenerate their comment for council consideration?
The information from both from your last meeting and from this meeting will be available to anyone in the general public to see in the city's website, as well as the video
All of it,
of the meeting. Yes.
automatically?
Yes, the city council has received all of the emails, and I think maybe even more than you've seen on this topic from the public. I know that there are probably a few that are tuned in online tonight. I know our city administrator is watching this meeting tonight, so they are well informed. They have talked about the issue. They will get your recommendation. Ultimately, the decision whether the tree stays or is removed is not a function of the city council as the city's policy board. They don't decide on the care of individual trees within the city. That falls to the administrative decision in the executive department. So the mayor and the city administrator will continue to evaluate all aspects of this.
Okay.
And then make a decision.
Well, before we let Mr. McFarland go, I have a kind of a technical question. When's the best time of year to collect acorns for one's own personal redeployment?
It would be probably in October, November.
Thank you.
Mr. McFarland, thank you for taking the time, not only tonight, but also previous meetings that we had. Appreciate your expertise. And I have to admit, the forms that we saw were confusing. So but very
understand.
educational. We appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Okay, we have taken care of the Davis Meeker oak tree on our agenda. In other business, Chuck has something to do with $10,000 worth of signs.
Well, I'd love to talk all about these signs, but really it was the continuous drive that Commissioner Nicandri put on the Parks Department to get those done. And to his credit, I think it's a great project, to be a great addition. And Commissioner, if you would like to speak to it, I would toss that back to you.
Yeah. Hey, how about a round of applause? Come on. Yeah.
Just waiting for the day when we see public's preferred.
He's lost his words.
Oh, man, he's really.
Public State Highway #1.
He has another project in mind.
SH1 on 2nd Avenue. That's my next project.
So the Parks Department has provided the preferred locations for these signs to the Transportation Department. One at the south end of Tumwater near Kippert's Corner. So as you enter Tumwater from the south, one on the north end near the Sunset Campus, just north of Safeway. So as you're coming back this way, and then one on each side of the Capitol Way Bridge.
That is awesome. And I'm really impressed by the size of the sign.
They are always much larger than they appear when you're in your car.
Yeah. And I keep teasing about the $10,000 cost. The actual cost is
$400.
$400.
It's about $100 a sign. So that, and we'll talk about that at an upcoming meeting, but you still have the remainder of your funds, both from last year and this year, to put towards some expenditure or expenditures. We can provide you with options on that. If you have pet projects or things you would like us to look into, we can do that as well.
Okay.
As long as it doesn't involve wallpaper, I'm all in.
Yeah.
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 Sorry, man.
It's an inside joke. It's what she's referring to. So for clarification is that the Historic Commission was given the task of trying to figure out what wallpaper we should put into the brewmaster house or the former house on near the Crosby House. So that's basically what that is all about, for clarification. And it was an interesting task going from room to room, trying to pick out wallpaper that comes from the 1800s or whatever it was, or 1900, whatever it was. But it was quite an interesting project that we had.
So
Long evening. Anyway, I am to the point where the next meeting is going to be, if we do hold it on May 16 of the current 2024, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I so entertain.
You entertain all the time. The motion to be adjourned, is there a second? Been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And those who did not vote can stay after the meeting and clean up the commons or the city hall or whatever. But David, thank you very much for your time and energy on looking into the minutes and notes and what have you. You took a good job on that. So appreciate that. And not too bad on the sign. It's pretty good. We're waiting for number 1 highway sign though. Anyway, see you people next month. Thank you again, you 3 gentlemen. I have to wear my hat next time.